Hi, let's take a look at another way of solving quadratics. This time we're going to use square roots, and let me show you what I mean by that. Here we have y squared equals 4. Let's take the square root of both sides. On the left hand side we had a perfect square, so we're just going to come out with y. On the right hand side we come out with a plus or a minus 2. You see, you can substitute either a plus 2 or a minus 2 back in for y, and you'll get what's on the right hand side. In this case it's 4. So that's the general strategy that we're going to be using here. So let's first, in this case, let's add 16 to both sides, and then we're going to land up taking the square root of both sides. We have a perfect square on the left hand side. So we'll eventually here we'll get x, and then that'll be equaling a plus or minus 4. So our two roots are plus 4 and minus 4. Our next problem here, let's take and add 81 to both sides. We want to get, on the left hand side, we want to get a perfect square involving x. So let's take this a little further here. Let's divide through by 4. So now we have a perfect square on the left hand side. We'll take the square root of both sides, and then we'll just get x on the left hand side. And on the right hand side we can take the square root of 81 and the square root of 4 individually. And so in the end here we should get x equals plus or minus 9/2 as our roots. This one here, we're going to have to watch out. We're going to subtract 49 from both sides. We're going to get a negative on the right hand side there. So let's see how we handle that. So let's take the square root of both sides. We'll get y on the left hand side. And on the right hand side, we're going to get, we can rewrite this as the square root of 49 times the square root of negative 1. Now the square root of negative 1 is I. The square root of 49 is 7. So we get y equals plus or minus 7i as our roots. So watch for the negative under the radical there. This one here, we got the same sort of thing going. Let's subtract 18 from both sides. So we get y squared equals negative 18. Take the square root of both sides, and then we'll get y equally. Now we'll have a square root of negative 1, and then we have 18 is 2 times 9. We can pull out a 3, and the square root of negative 1 is I. So we get y equals plus or minus 3i times the square root of 2 as our solution. This one here, there's a little something extra in here. Let's take the square root of both sides. And when we do, on the left hand side, we're going to get an x minus 1 and equaling a plus or minus 6. Now what we can do is set x minus 1 equal to a plus 6 and x minus 1 equal to a negative 6 and solve those individually, and we should come out with x equals 7, and then x equals a negative 5 for our two roots here. Now in our next problem, let's see what we got here. The thing to do in this one here is to first divide through by 5. We want to get a perfect square on the left hand side involving y. Alright, now let's take the square root of both sides. Now the square root of the left hand side is going to be y plus 2, and on the right hand side we're going to get a plus or minus 5, and let's do what we did in past case there. Let's set y plus 2 equal to a plus 5 and to a negative 5, and then we'll get y equals 3 and y equals negative 7 as our solution to this quadratic. Next problem. Here, let's add 24 to both sides. And y minus 2 squared. We have a perfect square there. Take this square root of both sides. Now, 24 is 4 times 6, so we'll be able to pull out a 2 from underneath that radical, and then y minus 2 on the left-hand side there. Now, we're going to get y equals 2 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 6. So our two answers are y equals 2 plus 2 times the square root of 6, and y equals 2 minus 2 times the square root of 6. So remember, there's two answers there. This one here, let's watch for a negative. Let's subtract 45 for both sides, and then let's take the square root of both sides. The right hand side, we can work that out with square root of negative 1, and then square root of 9 times 5. We can pull out a 3, and then we have an I for the square root of negative 1. And so we'll bring the 3 on the right hand side. We x equals 3 plus or minus 3i times the square root of 5. Thank you.